Yeah.
Your hand back right now.
Guarding the corner. Hey, I haven't updated Beat
So
Saber
hot here.
because
I'm
I
sweating
haven't
this out
like
moving.
the whole, I don't know what you call it, the side
I know
quest thing
the
where I can
headset.
add the songs, and I'm afraid it's
Yeah.
gonna break that. Do you think
Yeah, it's
that's
pretty
true,
fast.
or-
Also, I got a new air conditioning, a portable one, which I don't know how that's gonna work out. But we'll see.
Oh, but do you get a choice whether you update
Air conditioning is not
the
Yeah,
game?
so
Because
when I go into
maybe
play it, it says that there's like a new version available, and I can
Oh,
either
really?
update it
Is
or
it
I can
just more
launch
everyone is
anyway.
very
So I just launch it
not
anyway
loud?
without updating.
what? Oh, that's
Yeah,
interesting
Some
because
are.
on
Okay.
like for me on
Some
Steam,
people are.
there's no.
How you doing?
can't choose.
Yeah,
They
good.
force you to
How are you doing?
upgrade. You
Yeah,
can
these
you
apps are
can
in it.
like downgrade, but it's like a manual
Mhm.
process.
Also for
Have you
the
done one of these
index
before?
has a much
Yeah, I've
which
done lots
which
of them.
version is it up? Oh,
It's
okay,
my
but
preferred
it doesn't
method of
really
doing
matter
that.
Quality's about the quality.
you have a good
Instructionally.
pay, I think.
I
Presentations.
I think the
'Cause I can do it in my
last
pajamas, you know?
update of the game
Yep.
was sufficiently
wild
minor
concept
that it
Yep.
didn't really
Uh,
break
increase
any
the-
mods
Not
on
so wild.
PCVR.
Makes a lot of
But
sense.
I was breakfast.
Yeah.
I don't have
You-
a Quest, so I don't know. Like BM,
You've done some of these before, too?
Different
Yeah.
situations.
my
Yeah,
first, but I've
I wanted to do it
run,
for
like,
Yeah,
the
over
meetups
all the way
and
at the
stuff. I
end
live
of
in
the
Sydney,
room.
so I've run a lot
No,
of
You
well,
can
meetups
kind
hang
of
on.
not
Those
hear
are
it as
great.
much.
You gotta
the
figure
fit,
out
the
space,
Fitbeat new song, that one.
and this just makes
I'm
so
not
much
sure.
worse.
It
No,
looks
you,
like
you
there
say
was
something.
Yeah.
You talk about
Yeah, you broke out for a second.
No.
Did you say you live in San
Ah,
Francisco?
No,
I'm
no,
fine.
don't
I do.
sled. That's
Okay.
Can you hear me?
just
I'm sorry?
I can.
like
Where do you live?
46
Seattle.
new
Yeah, I guess the problem is
version.
my partner's there
Because
now.
what they did was they put the 90
Right
degree,
on.
360 degree,
What's the environment?
and
Um,
standard version.
It's pretty
On
chill,
loads and
actually,
loads of
and
existing
it might be
songs
just
that
because
didn't
I'm not
have
that
There's not actually a new
engaged
song.
in it.
Yeah, you're
I'm
right.
just staying
Well,
home, you
it's
know.
also
I've been
like that.
Yeah.
staying
Yeah,
home
it's
since
not
March.
like
And we're
No,
lucky.
I
Yeah,
don't
we're
say
super
it's
lucky because we
cool
live
unless-
next
unless it has
to
some bug fixes, you know?
some nice parks and stuff. So it's not like
There's like a surefire
I get to go out with the dogs and walk and get out and not
Well, you're
not
you're
go
gonna have
crazy.
to
So
figure that
I
out
empathize
anyway
with
at
the
some point,
with the
so
city where
research
you're
it
kind of
and
stuck
figure
in
it
a
out.
in a
Because with me,
condo or something,
with,
it
with,
starts to
with
get a little
PCs,
Yeah,
maddening.
there should be
basically
like
it's
some
just
Definitely not going to
Are you
judge
in
anyone that
like,
you
okay,
install the new
I
Yeah.
version
hear
and
people
then
in
Oh,
this
that's great.
bubble.
you sometimes
Yeah,
have to
that's
wait
right.
1 or 2
And
days,
blocks
or
everything.
And I
sometimes
used
it's
to
like
have to
immediate.
travel
You
a
can
lot to
just
San Francisco,
re-roll
and
rerun
even
the
before
install it
even
after
before
the
COVID, I
fact,
was
and
like
it's fine.
starting to really not enjoy that much
But it
anymore.
might
I was
be a
trying to
bit
get out of any
complicated.
travel that I had to.
Yeah, it's
So-
really hard to
What did you say?
conceptualize
Yeah,
it, especially
yeah, there's
around
no,
this
I
time.
mean, unless you do something weird, you're not going to lose scores, you know.
Yes.
I think it's going to take these
More,
big companies to really move out,
in your menu,
like, or really
and when you
like,
open it up,
persistently see that
okay,
you can work from home.
Well, as well as scores,
Well,
there's also like songs as well.
Yeah.
Because sometimes if you mess
When you
around,
walk
you
away,
can
what do you do?
like
To
songs
make it
downloaded.
If you want
So mainly in cloud infrastructure. So selling both physical and public cloud infrastructure, and all of the professional services that are intertwined with it. So not zero relation to Bitcoin or
Quest version,
cryptology or anything like that.
Okay, we're ready to start. You can take your places. Good to see you all. I can't believe it's Saturday again. It's actually Saturday again. That's insane. But yeah, it is. So thanks for coming, guys and girls. It's really great to see all of you. I'm Udi Wertheimer, in case you don't recognize me. I don't know. It says my name up here if you click on me, so it should be obvious. And this is Reckless VR. So if you're not in here with us, and if you're watching this on video, then you should know that we do Reckless VR meetups every week. And if you want to get an invite, you can follow our reckless_VR Twitter account, or you can go to recklessvr.com and sign up to the newsletter, and you'll get invites to your inbox every week to join. We also have a Telegram group. You just search Reckless VR on Telegram. So yeah, lots of ways to stay in touch. Don't miss it. Don't miss it. We have awesome content every week. And well, for those who are here, just so you know, behind you there's the video camera, and you can wave hello if you want, but try not to obstruct the view. And generally try not to move around too much during the presentation because it could be distracting. And yeah, so today we're joined by Selene Jin. She's the director of UX at Blockstream. And she actually worked on some products that probably all of you use, like Blockstream Green Wallet and Blockstream Explorer. And she knows a lot about UX, enough to be very frustrated with the Altspace VR UX. I think we're all frustrated with it sometimes. but yeah, so she's gonna just tell us about the first secret of great UX, and I think I'll just let you start, Selene.
Yeah.
So thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. So hi everyone. Thanks for coming today. So I work at Blockstream, and when I joined Blockstream, there wasn't UX and design related stuff previously discussed. And I also find that in general, the design and UX in the entire crypto Bitcoin space was at a very low maturity. So I think it was a good challenge, and that's why I started to work on Bitcoin. And today I'm going to help you take a deep dive into the first secret of UX, and hopefully you can have some takeaways on how to make Bitcoin UX great again. So let's start by defining UX in one sentence. What do you say? Would you say make things easier to use? Or would you say make the UI smooth and beautiful? So these are all partially correct, but they also wasn't able to reflect the core idea of UX. Let me start by telling you some stories. On the left, you can see it is the interior of USS Cobia. It's a submarine of the United States Navy during the World War II. And on the right, you can see the cockpit of Spitfire, which is the fighter plane credited with winning against the Nazi Germany's Air Force. So I will give you 5 seconds to think about what do they have in common and what's not in common. During World War II, while the jet-powered planes becoming faster and faster and has more features, at the same time, they also become harder to operate. And the plane crash was so frequent and involved so many different aircrafts. And at the first, the blame was, of course, on the pilots, because engineers find no defects in the machine themselves. But gradually, the officials turned their attention to the design aspect of the cockpit itself. So when the Army designed their first one in 1926, engineers measured the physical dimensions of hundreds of pilots and used it to standardize the dimensions of the cockpit design. So the engineers began to wonder, is it over time that the pilots has gotten bigger? Well, we certainly know that the American people are getting bigger over the years. So it could be a possibility. So they did the measurements all over again on more than 4,000 pilots this time. And everyone believed this new measurement will solve the crash problem, except for one researcher, and his name was Daniels. He used these size data from the 4,000 pilots to try to calculate the average, which is the data that they will be used to design the improved cockpit, such as height and sleeve length. And he defined the average as like within the middle 30% of the range of these values. And smart people like you probably already guessed what he found. Out of 4,063 pilots, not a single person fit within the average range on all the dimensions. So the cockpit designed to the average pilot actually fit no one. Another story was about Paul Fitts, who has invented the Fitts law. And back then he was a psychologist working at the Air Force Base in Ohio. And he solved the mysterious crashing of the mighty B-17. They keep having pilots slam their planes into the ground and somehow never deploy their landing gear. And you know what he found? The controllers of the wing flaps and the landing gear looked exactly the same. So then the Army learned when the US Navy was trying to improving the design for the submarines, instead of let engineers do all the designs, they started to bring in top industrial designers on board. So back then there was no concept of UX yet. So there was only industrial designers who generally working on like chairs and like more like a daily objects. So while they bring in these designers on board, at the same time, they also bring in cognitive psychologists and researchers to help figure out the mechanisms and make sense to the people who are using them. So these lessons learned during the war led people to become aware of the human factors. Then the designer's role started to expand. And more often now, not only working on the look, but also on how it works. And designers started to work with researchers, psychologists, also learning and applying this knowledge themselves to make things easier to use. So his name is Don Norman. You probably already know him. He was overseeing the advanced technology group at Apple in 1993. And he found that the terms people were using back then to describe this new design approach, which involved research, cognitive science, and make things that actually fitting people's use case and mental models. Like it's the word they used back then is like a human interface or usability. It was too narrow to describe this kind of new discipline. So then he coined the word user experience, and that was how people started to use the term. And back in early 2012, VR was thought as a failed experiment, and that was just 8 years ago. And right now, at this interesting time, we are gathering in a virtual space like this. Like how fast the technology has evolved. Like I'm always amazed every day I wake up. But would the technology advance matter to us at all if we are unable to use it? If the virtual conference room here was designed, say that's only able to accommodate 2 people, like me and Udi staring at each other, would all these features in the app matter to us at all? So a lot of business people thought that innovation and technology were the same thing. It's like if you are making new stuff, continuously adding more features, you're innovating. And the result is companies began to offer more, but not offer better. And what companies offers has become more and more disconnected from what people actually cares and they need. This is called the innovation gap. Bitcoin as a monetary innovation is also suffering from the technical advances that is not being able to properly perceived by the general audience and used by them. So how do we use what we learn from the war and apply user experience to bridge this innovation gap? If technology or engineering is focused on solving problems between object and object, user experience or design, on the other hand, is solving problems between human and the project. And highlight is human, which brings us to the first and foremost step to making a better UX. We start by asking ourselves one simple question. What people problem are we trying to solve? What does our target user actually want? Usually, this is a time where people fail in the mentality, like, oh, we need to integrate this feature in our app. We need to add more CTA on our webpage. We need to make the buy Bitcoin button bigger. So these are the problems that we need to solve for our products, or say for our company, but not the problems that people on the street would be care about. For example, not sure if you're aware of Chevy SSR. It is a retractable hardtop convertible pickup truck manufactured between 2003 and 2006. And yes, you're right, it's a car that's a pickup truck, but also a convertible roadster. Like why would someone want something like that? Like it's not going to be as good as a pickup truck, and it's not going to have the speed and performance of a sports car. So it was discontinued, and it's a classic example of what happens when a product is disconnected from what people wanted. So now you may also wonder, isn't figure out what people wanted and need what market researchers do? You know, they study consumer behavior and identify what they wanted. But there is a secret weapon of user experience, which is empathy. It is to put yourself in users' shoes and create an emotional connection to users. Here's how. I'm trying to solve the UX to click on this button. Give me 1 second. Okay. So, yeah, first step is to be a fly on the wall. Let's imagine you are designing the onboarding experience for a Bitcoin wallet. How would you approach that? One assumption that I hear quite often, especially from people with a more technical background, is that they expect the user to spend time, sit straight, write down their required phrase, mnemonic. If someone doesn't treat their own money seriously, they don't deserve Bitcoin. You probably hear this very often. But what is the actual real world environment when people are doing that? Your user may be sitting with a group of friends, enjoy the food, chatting. Then one friend mentioned about Bitcoin. and he got interested. So they went on talking about Bitcoin, and he was convinced to download the wallet. When he opens the app, he was blocked by of course, the recovery 24 words, and he couldn't see the UI, couldn't experiment with it with his friend to get, just a couple dollars of Bitcoin, unless he write down the recovery phrase. So he might say, "No, man, I'm not gonna do this right now." And then he went home and forget about this. He might also grab the let's say, restaurant receipt on table, flip back and quickly write down these words. And then he just snap it into his pocket and go home, accidentally put his pants into the washing machine without taking that receipt out. Game over. So when we are designing or testing the projects, we usually tend to think it almost like in a lab-like environment. So engineers calculated all the edge cases. If something was like a 1 out of, let's say, 20K chance that it might be hacked, it's not secure. But there is a difference between theoretical security and the security in real life. People make mistakes, and people are almost always trying to find the shortcut. If we don't take these factors into considerations, then what we are building are not going to be successful. So that's why the first step is really important. Be a fly on the wall and observe what they do and how your target user is learning things in the context of real environment. And very importantly, observe without judging. You may often hear these in Bitcoin. How can someone send coins to the wrong address? How can someone lost their own keys? How can the user not even know this? They must be dumb. This is a lawnmower from the 1980s. The British government back then observed a high incidence of people cutting off their own toes with this. Like, how can someone cutting off their own toes? Are they dumb? A psychologist named Jane Fulton Surrey was tasked to find out why. She went to people's home using her expertise to put them into ease and say, okay, so now show me where you were and what you were doing when this happened. And what she found was that a number of accidents happened not during the time people are mowing the grass, but rather people were carrying the machine across the yard. It turned out that the mower was designed to start at the moment you gripped the handle. So even worse, like people are at home doing this, so they are usually not wearing shoes. So were the people down, or it was the product is down? A research in 2016 revealed that out of 990 participants in an online survey, almost 23% indicated that they had lost Bitcoins. Of those who had, 43% indicated that the loss had been their own fault. Not understanding Bitcoin is a driven factor that people are not buying into it. So to dig deeper, why people are not understanding Bitcoin? What are the parts that they are confused about? And at what point did they become confused? For example, how people heard about Bitcoin is also part of the user experience that we need to take into consideration. If a person often hears something like someone got scammed by crypto, what he or she has the same patience to learn more about the matter compared to another person who constantly hear positive experience from his friend. So instead of throwing a conclusion such as people don't understand Bitcoin because they don't understand money, or people don't understand Bitcoin because they are not technical, we really need to zoom out and find the deeper why. You can hardly get a good answer from a very vague question. And then we also need to zoom out, look at the broader environment, such as cultural differences, timeline, etc. And now, from the example at the beginning, we know that there's no such thing as average. If you say you want to build a Bitcoin product for everyone, are you building for people who earns $10 a day, or people who has a relatively high net worth? Are you building for people in the States or people in Japan? Are you building it for millennials who had been exposed to computers since a very young age, or an elderly? We also want to zoom out to look at the longer time frame, because history carries its weight. Policies, systems, regulations, all can be barrier to how people understand certain concepts. And the current trends, and emerging issues also make a big difference. For example, the lockdown really accelerates the adoption of VR. In long term, it's not hard to see that the line of virtual versus physical world is disappearing. So how will that affect the use of Bitcoin, and how can we build a product in that context? So now the last thing, some of you might say, I've been listening to the users and actively implementing feedback, but some feedbacks are so conflicting, and I feel like the directions of what I build has been shifted from one to another. What should I do? Well, Henry Ford said, if I had asked people what they wanted, they would have said faster horses. People, they can only see what's already there. They don't see your product as a conceptual whole. They can't know your vision. So we need to always be open-minded, but listening to feedback, but also dig deep, think beyond what people are saying, and observe what they do. Sometimes 10 different feedbacks, they might be able to all lead to one problem that people wanted to solve for themselves. If you let the user take control, what you build will end up filled with mismatched parts and random features, and of course become very complicated to use. So really you have to figure out the core problem you try to solve with the product or service you're building. Frame a solid statement is the crucial first step of good UX, way before even starting to build anything on the UI level. So what is not a solid problem statement? I'll give you some examples. Something like, our user needs an app to buy Bitcoin. First of all, this statement is too vague and won't be able to become the North Star of your UX decisions. Secondly, you said it is an app, so it is already a solution, but Do you always have to spend all the cost to build an app? Sometimes not necessary. Sometimes the user use case you are solving might be just able to build like a browser plugin that might even work better. So using the previous 4 points we just talked about, really observe and define the specific type of user and identify why they want to buy Bitcoin. So even better, you can give that specific user you are designing a name, because archaeologists, when they try to re-architect the face structure of a mummy or something, they usually give it a name because it helps you to build the emotional connection and really think for your user. So something like, this kind of solid, this kind of problem statement will consider to be a solid one. So for example, Sarah, the 35-year-old stay-at-home mom, needs a way to gain financial freedom so that she can get rid of her abusive husband and take charge for her own life. I'm just making things up here right now. But then I want to show you that you need to come to that level of detail in order to make a better definition for who you are designing for and what kind of problem you are solving. So now, if you are crafting the user experience for Sarah, you will take into the consideration that, she's 35 and had been staying at home. So maybe she's not that technical, and she had been under an abusive environment, so she might also suffer from depression. And she really wants to get her life back together. So those factors may also have affect her tolerance on risks. So of course, these conclusions cannot be your pure assumption. It has to be from your actual investigation on the specific user using the previous process we talked about. Use the problem statement you framed on every decision you make for the products. Be it the color theme of the UI, what are the dominant features, or when do you release certain updates. Then you will be able to take advantage of certain events. Now, in the actual world, these process to identify the user needs are so often overlooked, because unlike building the UI, these efforts can't be seen and can't be touched. But sometimes we have to take time in order to save time. Build better UX for Bitcoin is not one person's effort. It has to be the collaborations between individuals and companies. And it has to be the collaboration among designers, engineers, business leaders, and every single person who wants Bitcoin to succeed. I hope my talk today can help all of us gain some new knowledge of UX and how we can make Bitcoin UX great again. Thank you.
Thanks, Selene. This was amazing. Thank you. This was great. If it's okay with you, I think I'll open it for some questions. Sounds good?
Yeah.
Awesome. So, so you guys are going to see on the bottom right, there's a raise hand button. You can just click it, and then I'll be able to give you permission to ask a question. Let's see. Let's start with Alex. Alex, go ahead.
I'm right over here. Thank you for the talk. Yeah, I mean, the talk was really good and very interesting. But the last point that you talked about, when you said that this needs to be a collaborative way of solving this problem. I don't really see how that would work because, I mean, the reason Bitcoin works is because people align their incentives and they do things because they have an economic incentive, and that spreads out over multiple things. I just don't see how people just getting together and saying we like to do things, it's going to work out at the end of the day. Can you clarify that a bit?
Did you mean that Bitcoin itself is an incentive for the people who want to get into it? So it doesn't matter if we collaborate on making UX? Is that what you mean?
No. What I'm trying to say is that if people try to do UX out of the goodness of their heart, that's not going to work. That's not going to be a good product. It needs to be out of an economic incentive. It needs to get priced in. For example, like if we start doing something right now and we put it out there, but we're not trying to make money out of it, well, we don't know if people are using it or not because we're not going to try to pay for it. And we don't need people to pay for it because we didn't put money into it. But if you're a business, you find really quick if your product is good or not because people pay for it or don't pay for it. So I'm just trying to see how could you have market dynamics, deciding if what you're doing is good or not, if you don't have if you have this way of people collaborating.
Okay, so I think we need to find the intersection of what our target user needs and what the business needs. Because if you only look at what our company needs, then you might build out of a product that matters to no one, and it doesn't matter what the incentive is because it's not going to make you money. So you really need to identify what opportunity you have by looking at the larger macro environment as well as the individuals, like how, for example, this trend of the line disappearing between virtual world and physical world, and the trend of internet becoming and computers becoming cheaper and more accessible to third world countries. Like, how does it going to affect the macro environment? Like what opportunity you spot? So it really is you need to identify the core idea, like what kind of problem are you solving, and see if it will be profitable for the business. Or if you are already building something, it's also really important to think about it because it's like for example, for a lot of companies I work for, it's very often in a situation that the high management, they will say, oh, let's add this feature because our user asked for it. But then, like, do people actually need it? Like if we are having a user group of for example, high net worth people, like, what the minimum buy Bitcoin lower to $10 matter to them? It's not going to be. So like, it's really like you need to go to the very specific level in order to find out the intersection. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, Michael, I mean, it's kind of touching the point. My comment was just more on, I don't think people collaborating to do great products, it works out pretty well. That was my comment. But yeah, I don't want to hold more time. Thank you anyway. We can talk afterwards.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Let's see. I'm gonna take a question from the chat. And by the way, just saying again, if any of you want to ask a question, there's a button on the bottom right. It says raise hand, and you can click it. So let's see. We have a question from Gloria. So Gloria says that a lot of people think that Bitcoin is not ready for UX improvement yet because we're still at the early phase. We're still trying to figure out the technology stack. We're still trying to figure out the very bottom layers. So do you kind of agree with that statement, or do you think that, I don't know, it's developed enough, or that we should think about it as early as possible? How do you think about that?
So I often have this question that when people say it is developed enough, like at what point it will be considered enough? Like it's the same thing as when people saying one thing is secure enough. At what point it will be defined as secure enough? because if we take a look back in the past 10 years, how Bitcoin technology have evolved, we can see the security we look at that point 10 years ago is nothing compared to what is right now, because it's constantly evolving. So I would say, like, in the next 10 years, this is going to keep happening, and there's never a point that's going to be enough. So it is really is how we define the priorities, what kind of technical difficulty to solve, and in what kind of and how we can take the opportunity of like emerging world events, like the crazy things happening right now, right? If we never work on the user experience, we just make the technology, try to make it as good as possible. Like right now, we wouldn't even be able to like just buy, sell, and use Bitcoin wallets, right? So I think it's just a constantly evolving process.
Yeah. Thanks. That's a great question and a great answer. So thank you. And let's take a question from Merch. Go ahead.
Hi, I was wondering, I thought it was interesting how you introduced problem statement to guide a product development, but I was wondering, do you have only a single problem statement for your product? Do you have a problem statement for each feature you develop? Can you really break it down that far that you have a single problem statement, like your example that you want to have a financial freedom enhancing wallet? But you might have a broader range of customers. So how do you work with these problem statements? How many are there, and at what level do they appear?
Yeah, this is a very great question. Thank you. So no, the answer is not really a single problem statement. So I would say, if you are, it's really good to start with one thing that you think most important, and branch out from there. If you want to start with like a quite diverse kind of user types, which is usually what companies are doing, especially in Bitcoin, because like a lot of companies, startups, and we are all trying to figure out, what's the direction we are ultimately going to heading, and we are experimenting a lot of things at the same time. So I would say, to start, we can define a lot of we can define multiple statements for each product we are building. I usually would recommend no more than 3, because if it becomes too much, you get very confused and it's hard to stay focused. So you can find 3 very specific user group that you are designing for, and come up with different personas and problem statements, and try to start with find the intersection between them. And if you are building multiple products in a company, you can do this on each of the products, and then conclude them together and try to find, what is an unified effort, like in both the UX level and marketing level, strategy level. Like, what is the unified effort we can do to able to have a constant message from our brand and from our product? So yeah, and also I have to mention that this is like a iterative process. So you might head into a direction and later on find it doesn't really work well, because the environment, the macro environment is constantly changing. So you have to figure out the balance, like what to stick on and what to give up. So it's really like come down to the level of practice and how you are thinking about the problem.
Cool, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Great, thanks. Next question from Waxwig.
Hey, hi.
Hi.
Yes, hi. So I was really interested in your example of the onboarding process. That was a concrete scenario you painted of the guy who can't write down the recovery phrase because he's sitting with his friends, and it really made me think about the distinction between the sort of consumer payment system idea of Bitcoin and the sort of more heavy, serious version of Bitcoin, and how we've always tended to sort of mix and merge them together in what we expect from wallets. So do you think that maybe there's an argument? Well, first of all, I think you're going to say no to this question, but do you think there's an argument for saying, do you think there's an argument for saying, oh, well, it's fine that he can't write down the recovery phrase because, he needs to be serious. And, I noticed, by the way, they were all drinking beer there. So maybe it's just as well he's not opening a Bitcoin wallet while he's drunk. So you see, there's that attitude. But then there's the opposite attitude of saying, well, well, if it was like a Lightning wallet, then it would be pretty easy to use, and if the amounts are constrained to small amounts, then maybe it's really cool that he can just like quickly open a wallet in 5 seconds and get $10 of Bitcoin or something. So do you agree with me that tension is really important, and that maybe we need to understand that in the future it'll be Lightning type wallets that will enable that kind of user experience, whereas the more traditional Bitcoin wallet, which doesn't really distinguish between 100 Bitcoins and 10 Satoshis, maybe those traditional Bitcoin wallets, maybe it's okay that they're kind of like heavy and they don't offer a good consumer grade experience.
So right now there is clearly a distinction between Bitcoin, like the Lightning wallet versus non-Lightning wallet. But how do you know in 5 years there will be such distinction? And maybe Lightning works so well in the background that people don't need to realize they are using Lightning anymore. So first of all, in that case, this won't become a question. So second case, yes, and by working in this space, there are a lot of debates on like how we should onboarding user. Like, are we supposed to teach them everything upfront, or like make them very serious, or are we supposed to just ease it a bit? So I think it this way, like. Let's say when we were like a kid, do we like it when our parents are trying to educate us? Like if our parents tell me, oh, never take that TV apart because it's gonna break it, are we going to listen? No, right? Because we want to explore things and it's fun, and sometimes we want to take shortcuts because that's the nature. So why would want we to put that kind of burden to the user upfront? Like, we can figure out a way to educate them in a more acceptable, nice, and friendly way, and but not try to force them onto anything, because there's like, in terms of wallet market, you can see there are tons like there. Like if you search App Store. And for a regular person, they might not know what's the difference between a Bitcoin wallet and like a multi-coin wallets. If you make it really difficult, you think you save people from like risk their money, but you don't think that you're also taking the responsibility that they might fall into the trap of like some scams because they make it easier for them. So that's really something we need to consider. Another thing is, for example, right now, if we are buying some electronic device, say like a TV into home, instead of need to set up everything upfront in order to do anything, right now a lot of TV already have the UX that you are be able to browse through a bit of stuff and then set up things later. So this is an approach we can learn when we are trying to consider UX of Bitcoin, because when people are like actually see the progress and they start to see the fun of it, and they are incentivized and they don't feel themselves are dumb, like they feel accomplished, then they will have a better mood and more like better incentive to learn more on Bitcoin. So it can be a graduate process, but we need to give them some incentive at the beginning. So that's what I think.
Great, thanks. Let's see. Okay, next question from BTC Kitty. Wait, something popped up. Sorry, just a moment. The UX here. Okay, BTC Kitty, go ahead.
Hi.
Hi.
So can you talk about some specific UX design decisions that you made at Blockstream?
Specific UX decisions. There there has been quite a ton over the time. So when I started, obviously I was the first designer at Blockstream. So so back then we don't have a product actually built out in terms of in a user-friendly way, and we don't have a website that communicates who we are. So basically, I started by try to dig the message from multiple channels for like what we are trying to do and what we are trying to build and what is the what is success look like for us, and branch out from there to try to see that like how am I as a designer try to implement that vision into the products we are building to to bring more benefits to the larger Bitcoin ecosystem. And it really comes down to a lot of decisions, such as for example, we really want to bring Bitcoin wallet, make Bitcoin wallet easier to use. So before I joined, there was the Green address, which is a wallet with super advanced feature and technology and super secure. But then it has a very because it has so many features. So as an average user, in terms of average, I would say like less technical, but still at a like more technical spectrum. Like people usually wouldn't be able to figure out where to find what. So what in the UX decision process is more like how do we bridge from this super technical wallet into a wallet that gradually into a wallet that's going to be acceptable for more people. So I think in terms of what's the basic most important function we needed for other Bitcoin wallets, you need to look at your balance, look at your transactions, and send and receive. That's it. Everything else is a configuration and it's a security feature that you can use, but you can also choose not to use. So that's why we make the decision to make it really simplified, as the home screen is just what you needed. As the multiple account or other features, we make it less dominant. And so for people who like to tinker things, like they are able to, but for people who don't want to do, they can just easily make do what they want. And as the company grows, then our design team also expanded a bit. Now we have designers and web developers on the team also, and then making the UX decision process as more like becoming like we stick with, try to find the vision, and if what we are building is aligned with that vision, and then open to all the suggestions that our team come up with. So sometimes you want to be able to step out, like step back and let the team member brainstorming, like even let's say someone who might not coming from a UX background, but as long as you keep emphasis on what the ultimate goal our product is and our company is, like how you create features and make experience align with it. So like we explore a lot of possibilities on that front, and I'm keep getting amazed on like how people are able to generate better ideas. And for what we end up bringing to the hands of the users, it's really efforts not only from our design team, but from the like company as a like a whole. So like how people make the trade-off between the timeline and the security and the UX is also part of the decision. So it's not like a one person effort, but like everyone's effort. Yeah.
Cool.
Awesome, thanks. Celine, stop me if you need to stop me. Otherwise, I'll keep throwing questions. So next one is from Merch again.
Hey, I had a follow-up on the scenario where somebody is introduced to Bitcoin at the table. I have been in this situation. I can remember twice distinctly, and the one time the person actually did write down the words on a receipt, and the second time they said they'd do it later and basically exited the try-out exploration phase. So I was wondering, since I think probably a lot of us have experienced this scenario, could you maybe highlight what decisions you made, how to put that maybe in the background of the first step of a wallet, but you still need to be able to get your words, and just concretely with this example, could you explain it a little more?
Let me think of an example.
Or like, how did you solve this problem?
Yeah, so in terms of the wallet specific, like that use case.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think I'm not sure if you saw the news. I think it was last month or sometime that Square Crypto granted like I think Tancred Hayes he came up with the seedless backup, and he built a threat model on it. And I'm really happy to see that kind of development in the ecosystem, because actually it has been a long-term discussion that's suggesting to engineers that we want to make this process easier, and writing down the words is just not let people take self-custody. Like it's a good end goal for Bitcoin, because everyone has to be their own bank, hold their own keys, otherwise it lost the purpose. But how do we bridge people from they are all using centralized bank system and so used to it since they come to this world, to a completely new approach? So I think like we at the same time frame maybe see this backup is slightly at a chance less secure than theoretically then you manage your own words. But then as we mentioned, there's a lot of people mistakes that's actually going to increase the risk of losing this, right? So I think it really comes down to the level of how we are actually looking at people live their everyday life. It's not that we are in a lab and thinking, this is the potential use case that's going to happen in like either 0 or 1. It's not binary, right? So yeah, so to answer your question, I think I would be like on the spectrum of supportive of like the security approach and the education approach to a way that fits like the larger audience mind model, like not post anything and not try to make something that's very unfamiliar to people, because I think familiarity is just so important.
But concretely, how did you solve the onboarding blocker of having the seed? Does it just not happen in your wallet? Is it later? Do you remind people? How did you solve it concretely?
Yeah. So in Green, currently we are still doing the 24 words upfront, but I do see a trend that in the future we might be able to improve that, but that's still like, that it's not one person's effort. It will be like more people in the space actually are able to think it in a newer way. So I think that's just very important.
Oh, okay. Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Merch. Actually, so I have a question too that I'd like to ask you. So when you have a business, when you have some commercial offering, then it's an easy to start, and I think it connects to some of the other questions that we had before. It's an easy start to look at, okay, what's the goal of the business, and how are we going to drive the user to use the product that we want to offer. But in Bitcoin, a lot of times we have projects that are completely open source, they're completely free. People basically build them because either because it's a tool they want to use themselves, or it's a tool that they like the challenge of building it. Recently, maybe they're getting a grant to work on it, but it's not, they're not trying to drive anyone to use any specific service or any specific solution or any specific product. They're basically building it because they want to. And then, so how do you approach that kind of project? Because you don't, what's the user that you're going to look for? Are you just building it for yourself? Are you, so how do you approach something like that?
Yeah, so very great question. And open source is a really interesting topic, and I've only been frequently exposed since Bitcoin, I would say, and I think it certainly has its upside, because it's a shared knowledge, and it's just we're stronger when the knowledge is shared. But as you mentioned, some people, they are building it for themselves, or they are building it because they like to play around with the technology. So that's it, just being bring it to these two specific use cases. Like if they are building it to themselves, like they will make it as close as what they wanted, right? So that it's like I would say it's like a very frequent and unique problem in open source. But then that's also that's nothing hurt if people just want to build for themselves, and they might along the way finding like-minded people also want to build the same thing. So that's nothing hurt. But I would say to accelerate the Bitcoin development and adoption, it's good that we have a unified effort to, come up with a series of use cases, and then the open source effort can be dedicated to these specific use cases they want to build on. So recently, Square Crypto has initiated the design community, and one of our goals is to combine effort of research and come up with solid use cases that people can reference to and build on. So I think that's very important and good contribution to the community. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, it's a cool new approach. The designer community. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to see what that looks like. It's really cool. Yeah. Okay. So it looks like that's all the questions we have. So thank you, Selene. This was awesome.
Yeah. Thank you.
The presentations were great. The presentation was great, and the answers were great too. So this was awesome.
Okay. Thank you. And I hope you have some takeaway at least. So I would be happy for that.
Yeah, I know. I
Mhm.
mean, I know I did, and I think everyone did. So okay, so this is it for the presentation. I guess so. Yeah, I just missed the window here. So, I mean, I want to thank Andrew, who was helping us behind the scenes with moderation here today. And if you're watching this like on YouTube, then you can subscribe and hit the notification bell if you want to get notification every week to watch it on YouTube, or you can sign up on recklessvr.com so that you can join us in VR. You don't actually need to have a VR headset to join. You can join with your PC and kind of walk around with the keyboard and mouse, so that's cool too. We do those every Saturday, but next Saturday is 4th of July, and because a lot of people here are Americans, we're gonna skip next Saturday actually. But we'll be back the week after that, so don't worry. I know I'm sad about it too, but we'll be back. We'll be back the weekend after that, and yeah, and this weekend, as we do every weekend, we're gonna go to VR chat. It's pretty simple. You just go there you go there and join through my user account, I guess, and I'll have the I see Merch that you want to speak, but I'm going to unmute you in a moment, so don't worry. So yeah, you just can see on the Telegram group that I'll have the instructions to join the VR chat thing. It's basically like going out for drinks after a meetup. It's pretty cool. I hope Selene might get a chance to join us too. And yeah, that's basically it. So I'm gonna mute all of you now, and we'll see you next time.
Wow.
Hey, Hoodie.
Yes.
Right.
Where is the Kraken ad?
Do you wanna? Are you offering me a sponsorship? Is that the?
No. I mean, where it is? It disappeared.
Yeah.
Oh.
It disappeared. I have a new ad. It's a Reckless VR ad.
Oh, way better. Did they provide good liquidity?
It does. It does. We have some liquidity.
Woody,
Is it because
I'll miss the meetup next week.
No, he
since
just said there isn't
the US
one.
has completely bungled the response to COVID. They've also canceled basically all the July 4th
They did?
celebrations. So we're actually all going to be home anyway. So.
Yeah.
Do a meetup. Do
Oh.
a meetup.
Hello. Thank you for coming.
Do you want to do a? Well, we can do like a history of the 4th of July meetup and have fireworks.
Johnny, okay. I have to click
There
on
is
you.
fireworks.
Are they gonna have-
So yeah.
Just go straight to the arcade.
Yeah, I can't
That's an
anymore
option
next
too.
week.
She cancel something.
It's my kid's
Okay.
birthday next week, so we'll be celebrating that.
Yeah,
Oh, nice, congrats.
I can see you're like teleporting.
That's good. Birthdays are good.
A little bit, yeah.
I have an idea how to
So like are you
manage the seed
working in
words.
the space as well?
Like doing, I'm not sure if I saw it in some wallet, but just don't